Well, so this was last week's thing. Obviously, 5 days and 3 loads and $1,200 in gravel, and this is what we got. Got running water coming across the driveway. We've got water seemingly coming up from out of the ground. So I don't know about you, but I feel like this is just one big mess and starting to feel like a really expensive mistake, and I kind of feel like we just need to pull the plug.
Yeah, I agree.
So recently we've had like record rainfall. In this particular area we've had over 5 inches of rain in 48 hours. The Chehalis River has said to have been jumping its banks, so I'm heading out to the property to check out what's going on. We haven't been out here in over a week, and obviously we have moisture problems, if you will. As I'm driving up the road and up the highway, I'm seeing all around me where the river has overflowed, the creeks jumped its banks, and a lot of the farmlands nearby have flooded over. So I'm really anxious and kind of concerned about what I'm going to find out there. So I finally arrived at our property, and it looks like, fortunately, the trailer and the cabin are nice and dry. But we obviously have a water problem here, which we knew since day one. And up here on where I was trying to clear that trailer pad, we now have flowing water. So this is definitely a good sign that we're going to have to do quite a bit of mitigation here for water runoff coming from the street up that way.
This flood actually turned out to be a blessing in disguise. The muddy challenge in the driveway, the heavy rain, and even the county funneling their floodwater into our property. We decided to pull the plug on all earthworks and wait for the drier season, and put a lot more time and efforts into much needed drainage and water mitigation.
Good evening, everybody. It is Friday afternoon / evening, and the weather was actually pretty decent today, although cold. I spent a good portion of the day wandering around with the chainsaw, cutting up a bunch of the old dead branches and trees that are laying around all over the property, which later on we're going to actually use for firewood. Anyway, that segues perfectly what my next little project is, and that's heat. And of course we want to put a wood stove back into the cabin and use that as the primary heat source, but we also want to have supplemental heating. Anyway, there was already a heater installed here, and it's not even hooked up to a thermostat. You turn it on and off by using the breaker in the panel, and that obviously needs to be cleaned out. And this is something, even the little label says, clean every 6 months. So after I got the cover off, I instantly noticed right away, besides it being quite dirty, that it is also very insufficiently sized. The rule of thumb is about 10 watts for every square foot. This is 1,000 watts. It would be good for up to about 100 square feet. This room that we're in right now is actually closer to 170 square feet. So we need at least a 1,500 watt, and maybe even a 2,000 watt wouldn't be a bad idea, especially since there's no way to close this room off from the rest of the cabin. So what I think I'm going to do is I moved the heater actually over one stud bay, so it's directly underneath the panel now. Because over here we're going to have some kind of entertainment unit, and so we want the heater over that way so it doesn't end up behind it. So I think I'm going to put the thermostat just right here above the light switch. So when you come in, you shut the door, you can reach over and crank the heater on and get the place starting to warm up before you go over and start the fire.
And about an hour later, the dream was reality.
So with that said, I think it's about dinner time. Good morning, folks. It is Saturday morning. Anyway, at this point, I am pretty much finished with roughing in the electrical that's going to go into the living room. So now it's time to dig into the loft upstairs, which is going to be the bedroom. So what I need to do today is try to figure out what circuits are up there, what they're doing, and how I can modify them to do what I want to do. I can see already there are 2 wires coming out of the panel. They're going through and they're going upstairs. I think there's at least 2 circuits upstairs, which isn't totally necessary for a room that small. So I'm hoping maybe one of them I can modify it and use it as the heating circuit. So what you got going on?
Pulling up the last little bit of flooring that hasn't already been tore up. I'm going to replace this with something new throughout the whole area.
Right, plus we need to inspect the subfloor, especially in this corner, just to make sure that there's no rot. At least it's only a small cabin, right?
Yep. Alright, so tore out all of the flooring down in the living room, and the floor looks pretty good. Just a few little holes, nothing too big, it's in pretty good shape.
One of the circuits coming up is going to be for the baseboard heater, which is laying right there in the box, and the thermostat is going to be over there because the bed is going to be against this wall under the window, so that from bed you could actually reach over and change the thermostat, which I think is kind of cool. Also, on either side of the bed, you can see those blue boxes. We're going to have some nice wall sconces that are going to frame the side of the bed. And over here, there's going to be some 3-way switches so that you could turn off the wall sconces or the overhead light from either this location or this location as you go down the stairs. Overhead, we have in the, that is going to be like a storage loft. And right here is going to be a single overhead light. Good evening, everybody. It is Sunday evening, and after a day of sleeping in, 2 trips to town for material, and crap like that. Spending a few more hours this evening in the cabin getting a few things done. And I'm going to show you a really neat tool here in a second that I think every homeowner should have. So this little guy right here, its technical name is a no contact voltage tester. It's kind of trade slang as a tick tracer. You turn it on and you can test any AC voltage without having to touch the actual device itself. Such in this case, we could see that that bus is hot. We can also see right here, we could use it on a wire and read through the insulation of the wire to know that wire is hot. And now the wire is dead. You could use it to test outlets, switches, extension cords, Christmas lights. It's about 20 bucks at the hardware store, and they're indispensable. So the heater up here in the loft is going to be a 1500 watt baseboard heat, which kind of gets a lot of bad rap. People have a tendency to not like it for whatever reason, but actually baseboard heat is 100% efficient, meaning that 100% of the power that they use goes into generating heat. There's no moving parts. Number 2, they're very, very quiet, so they're great for bedrooms and places where you sleep. There you go, I got a new apprentice.
Yep, my first one.
So once again, we're using these for temporary lighting. I strongly recommend doing this too if you're doing any kind of remodeling or construction at your place. This little lamp holder I think was like $2.49 at Home Depot, and then a light bulb is, you know, $1 or $2. And that way, if during your construction it gets whacked and broken, you're only going to be out a couple bucks rather than breaking your expensive permanent fixture. So with all of that being done, I can happily say for once that the electrical rough-in the loft in the living room is pretty much done unless we decide to change or add something. How about that?